The silly season is in full swing at Nascar. Kyle Busch is even touted for seats, despite being with Richard Childress Racing. Is it true that he will return to Joe Gibbs Racing? Could we really see the stars align again for this one? Martin Truex Jr.'s formal retirement opens the door for a slew of bizarre events to occur. Depending on who fills that role, additional dominoes may fall in the 2025 season. But is Busch one of them? Kyle Busch is said to be interested in returning to Joe Gibbs Racing. Following the Mars Company's withdrawal from NASCAR in 2022, the two parted ways over sponsorship difficulties. Could Kyle Busch truly quit Richard Childress Racing to rejoin Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports? While this is a wonderful topic to have and many people are discussing it, don't expect it to happen anytime soon. While never say never exists, Fox Sports' Bob Pockrass stated that both situations are very unlikely. For the record, don't count on him ever returning to Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports, and of those two very unlikely scenarios, rank a return to Hendrick above a return to JGR, Pockrass submitted. And if talking remote possibilities, don't rule out Busch going to another former rival like RFK Racing as much as any other team. It would be hard to heal the wounds left, on both sides, by the Busch-JGR split, and Hendrick has such a solid stable, it probably would look for a driver who could be a championship contender for 10 to 20 years, not a driver with a fiery personality who is about to turn 40. Of course, the whispers of a prospective split with RCR have coincided with Busch's dismal performance this season, particularly recently. After collecting his second DNF of the season on Sunday at Iowa, Busch is currently 31 points behind Bubba Wallace for the 16th and last playoff place. He has finished outside the top 10 in 5 consecutive races. Busch, who won 3 races in his first 15 starts last season, is on a 38-race losing skid, the longest in his career. For the first time since 2004, he might go without a regular season win. Kyle Busch is in the middle of the worst stretch of his Cup Series career. Busch was asked this past weekend in Iowa if he would ever contemplate returning to Hendrick or Joe Gibbs. Busch kept the door open for a future reunion, but he promised commitment to RCR in 2025. "I would say anything is possible always," Busch remarked. "Certainly if I was welcomed, I would go back. If Hendrick welcomed me back, I'd go back. But right now, I'm at RCR with my group of guys and the deal I have right now in place. So, we're trying to work and build this program and make RCR great again." Kyle Busch also inquired if JGR had approached him over the available position. Of course, his contract does not enable him to communicate with other groups. "No, they pretty much knew what my terms were, so there are no talking clauses." Kyle Busch's comeback to JGR is currently unlikely. Busch might have failed to directly comment on Joe Gibbs Racing, but he did it on purpose, mentioning Hendrick Motorsports. The driver of the Num 8 vehicle is under contract with Richard Childress Racing until 2025, although his contract expires before the 2026 season. Could Busch return to Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports? The door is not closed. Despite his struggles this season, Busch's old Joe Gibbs teammate Denny Hamlin feels he is far better than the numbers indicate, according to his Actions Detrimental podcast. "They are on a slide right now for sure," Hamlin said. "I don't know where he was running. I saw on social media that they thought it was a top 5 car. I didn't see him most of the day because of where I was running, so I can't really speak to that. But certainly, Kyle Busch is better than his results are showing right now, and the team itself is better than the results that they're showing." Some of the luck. I hate the word luck in racing because you do make your luck most times. If you get caught up in a wreck running 15th, well, you shouldn't have been running 15th because that's where the wrecks usually start. So, luck is an overused word, but certainly they've had some misfortunes. Some of that was on them and others it just happened. It certainly looks like Denny Hamlin still feels that Kyle Busch could add something to JGR, but not everyone thinks that way. NASCAR legend Kevin Harvick has downplayed Kyle Busch's ambitions of rejoining his previous squad, asking whether a reunion is even a viable option. Kyle Busch is entertaining, and the idea of switching to another team is reasonable. After a terrible season thus far, he may not make the playoffs. Busch's current winless streak of 37 races is the longest in his career, and he has had multiple dismal results, including his second DNF in the previous 3 events. However, his current contract with Richard Childress Racing has the opportunity to be extended until 2025. Thus, his statements might put both Busch and his current team in a very uncomfortable position for a long time. Clearly, Kevin Harvick does not believe Kyle Busch and Rick Hendrick will be reunited. On Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast, Harvick discussed Rowdy's relationships with Joe Gibbs, specifically his connection with HMS, saying, "He threw out the Hendrick piece of it too. I mean, he basically got thrown out of Hendrick, right? when he was driving the Xfinity car and everything they had going on there. So I'm very confused. I'm so confused about making those comments about driving at Gibbs and Hendrick, because I don't know what that does for you in making your situation better at RCR. Further iterating his major concerns, RCR and his team, Harvick said, his team and the position that it puts them in, just not being 100% sure that in your answer, in what you say, because the perception is going to be 9/10 of what you think. Now the door's open. The door has been blown completely wide open as to what all this means for Kyle Busch and RCR. Is he peeking over his shoulder, looking to go somewhere else? But I personally don't see a scenario where he goes back to Hendrick or Gibbs. Harvick does not see why Kyle Busch would make those statements unless he is absolutely upset with his current circumstances. It appears Busch has left the door open. What do you think? Could Busch return to one of his former teams? So last week, Kyle Busch hinted at a potential comeback to any of his previous teams. At that time, it did not appear that what he said on Saturday was a planned message to Richard Childress Racing indicating that he is leaving. Busch seems to be discussing reality, although uncomfortably. According to the reports and rumors, we're not expecting him to ever return to Joe Gibbs Racing or Hendrick Motorsports, and of the two extremely implausible situations, a return to Hendrick ranks higher than a return to JGR. And when it comes to remote possibilities, don't count out Busch heading to another old adversary, like as RFK Racing, just like any other team. The wounds caused by the Busch-JGR separation would be difficult to repair, on both sides. And with such a strong stable, Hendrick would likely search for a driver who might be a championship contender in 10 to 20 years, rather than a driver with a fiery personality who is about to reach 40. But all this got us wondering about which drivers might return to a previous squad. So here are several drivers that could return to a former team. Tyler Reddick joining RCR. If Reddick's time at 23:11 does not go well, he may return to RCR. Yes, there were negative sentiments about how it was handled, but Reddick embodies the racer mindset that RCR fans like. Brad Keselowski joining Penske? That is difficult to envision. Keselowski departed Penske to have a greater voice in the team's competitive approach. He would not get that back. Chris Buescher joining JTG Daugherty Racing? Buescher could return to either of his places, JTG or front row, if he wished, because he left both teams on good terms. But it's difficult to imagine RFK willing to let go of Buescher. Joey Logano joining JGR? It is possible that if the stars aligned and Logano did not receive a Penske offer, JGR would have an opportunity. Daniel Suarez joining JGR? Never say never, but Suarez appears to have found a home at Trackhouse, and JGR has had several opportunities to recruit him if they desired. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. to RFK? Nah. Stenhouse's Cup career is set to finish with JTG Daugherty Racing. Eric Jones joining JGR. This is feasible, but not with the JGR No. 19 vehicle. Chase Briscoe appears to be in line for it. Sure, Jones was dismissed by JGR to make place for Christopher Bell, but if JGR needed a veteran while developing other drivers and wanted a recognized commodity, Jones would be at the top of the list. Justin Haley to Kulig? Although unlikely, it is feasible in the next years. The stars, like many others on this list, would have to align in order for them to benefit from each other. What do you think? Would any of these moves make sense? And are they even possible? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.